everyone, we're back with another episode of How to Get My Job. We sit down with amazing people within the design and product industry and ask them how their careers started, evolved, and what advice they have for those coming after them. Joining us today is Rico Surridge, Chief Product and Technology Officer at Which. Hey Rico, how you doing?
Hey Danielle, thanks for having me. Great to be joining you.
Great. So let's jump into it with the first question. How did you get your first job in product?
So I went to uni, like many people, although not everyone, and increasingly fewer people. And when I left uni, I applied to a bunch of jobs. I mean, I made over 40 applications and didn't get anywhere with any of them, and ultimately ended up joining a really small startup. I think I was the fourth person that joined this group. And what was really nice about that, looking back on it, this wasn't planned, by the way, but what was really nice about that was I joined as a kind of entry web developer, but inherently as a part of a startup, particularly one that's only got 4 people initially, we grew to about 8 people. You have to get involved in a little bit of everything. So, I would do a little bit of the UX design, a little bit of the graphic design, speak to stakeholders, do some of that user research type work. And invariably, when an organization's that small, you become acutely aware of things like cash flow, and you've got very quickly a much broader set of experiences and understanding. So I kind of started off there. I then transitioned into a really traditional business analyst type role as working for a consultancy. That was quite helpful in that then provided a bit more structure, some of the hard skills, the good sort of logical stuff that we know from, process flow mapping and requirements capture and that sort of thing. So I valued that piece of experience as well. And that blended into a kind of an unofficial product owner type role. Well, somebody saw the work that I was doing there, put a bit of faith in me, put a bit of trust in me, and gave me that promotion. It was at a period of time when I was working at ITV, and I valued that enormously as well. The fact that, you've done a whole bunch of work, you've demonstrated some skills, and then somebody has put their faith in you for that promotion. When I started out, product wasn't as structured. There weren't career path frameworks. And so I think if I was starting out now, my advice would perhaps be gaining a breadth of experiences is really valuable. And I would say try lots of different things out. But I would recommend now, get involved in an organization, perhaps it's got a more mature product practice, a BBC or a Spotify or a Google or something like that. Try and get yourself into a junior level associate product manager type role and just learn through exposure to other product managers and other disciplines. And that would probably be my advice now. But all experience is good experience. That was my journey into my first product management role.
Amazing. We haven't actually had that before. We've definitely had, people leaning on existing communities, but we haven't actually had someone in an organization, I guess, putting you forward or, suggesting that you transition into this. So that's really interesting. And maybe a good bit of advice there would be to make friends within your
find your advocates.
Yeah, find your advocates. I love that. That is, find your advocates. I'm stealing that. So now obviously you've had an incredible career in product. What would be great for our listeners to know is, how did you make the switch from product manager to CPO?
For me, I think a lot of it was born out of, being reliable, being consistent, being that sort of dependable person, and having people, again, maybe advocate for you and speak about you in that way, and then really delivering against some outcomes, having that list of metrics or dials that you have shifted within an organization where you can say, well, look, I took us from X to Y, and here's how I did it, and this is the result that it generated. And so I think the bundling of those things helped me make that transition. I think then in kind of practical terms, again, what helped me a lot as I made that change and I did my first CPO role was really, prior to that, going kind of beyond the remit of the product management role itself. And I think that for anyone that has been a product manager for a while, is in many respects second nature. We're not generally a community of people that are hemmed in by our job descriptions. We love getting involved in different things. Really think about that, lead kind of broader organizational change, take the time to appreciate and understand all of the other functions and disciplines, spend time with marketing, but spend time with legal, and, really have an appreciation and be able to talk to those different functions, because that's the sort of thing that will make a big difference. Being able to look up and out and across all of those different functions is a big part of the role. I think the only one other thing I would perhaps add in practical terms was a little bit of resilience, because like I say, it's not a certainty. You're always going to get pushback. There's always going to be opportunities that don't quite play out. And you've just got to trust in your own ability. You've got to trust that all of those cumulative experiences that you've built up, someone will see that and acknowledge that. But it's a big jump to make, I think.
That is so true. I really love that mindset of just acknowledging or being comfortable with always having to learn something new. And that goes back to what you said earlier about being able to work across loads of different departments and with people from different disciplines. Amazing. Cool. So let's go on to the next question. So I guess now that you've been obviously in this space for a while now, what would be great to know is, what are the most important qualities a product manager or product leader could have?
For me, in my experience, one of the greatest qualities you can have, possibly in any role, but I think particularly in a product manager role, is a lot of honesty and a lot of radical transparency. And I'll add to that with the ability to really simplify either very technical things or potentially complex processes and concepts, and then be able to communicate that. And I think that bundling up of transparency and honesty and simple communication is the real heart of what a product manager does. Yes, there's everything else in terms of practical skills and speaking to users and et cetera, et cetera. But I think if you can gain a very genuine trust with both the team that you're operating with and the stakeholders that you're trying to service and work with, and doing that through saying, we understand the problem space, we also don't understand these bits, or some of our underlying technology is not where we would like it to be, it's more complex, or it's more fragmented, or whatever it might be, or perhaps there's a piece of technology we actually just don't understand and we don't have the skill set for. Setting some of those expectations and being very genuine, I think builds credibility. If you're very honest about that, that's when the stakeholders in the other disciplines can lean in and go, well, okay, I can contribute this skill or this idea or this piece of context. And that will often shortcut things, and you'll have much quicker conversations, and you'll get to building the thing or the right thing and then driving the right outcome much, much sooner. I think for me, maybe rightly or wrongly, I think in so many respects, like work-life balance is really important. But for product managers in particular, it isn't really a 9-to-5 kind of job. And you're always going above and beyond to speak to someone or to do something that makes, drives the success, drives the outcome that you're going for. And so I always hesitate to say that slightly in that kind of 9-to-5 mentality, but it is a thing, I think, to be aware of going into product and as you go on your product journey. And so that's my take on it. There's loads out there in terms of the, communication skills and the ability to write good user stories and good acceptance criteria, and all of that great stuff as well. But for me, honesty, transparency, simple communication, and self-awareness would probably be my 4 qualities for a product manager.
I love that. I really like what you said about the first one is great, because I feel like the honesty piece is very difficult to master. And also what you said that was quite interesting is what you said about, it not being a 9-to-5 job all the time. How have you kind of dealt with that?
I suppose in the interest of honesty, I've always practiced a lot of Zen. Meditation's always been really important to me. That feels like a really kind of cliched sort of answer, but it's the honest one, so I kind of got to run with it. But, you know, first 15 minutes of every day when I get to the office, usually earlier than everybody else, that's what I will do. That helps me reset. That helps me ground myself a little bit, just kind of quite literally empties the mind so that I'm ready for everything that I need to think about in that particular day. But then, of course, taking the longer breaks is important too. I know a bunch of people that have taken sabbaticals or had nicer, longer holidays.
Yeah, completely. And I think, yeah, like anything, there should be periods of rest and recovery. We all want the perfect work-life balance. The reality is that doesn't happen all the time. But when you can get it in, those periods of rest and recovery, get it in. And yeah, I guess we're at our final question, which is, what's the best career advice you've ever been given?
If I had to go for one, I think for me, the best piece of advice I've been given, particularly around kind of career and finding your next roles and things like that, is it's quite often the roles that you decide not to take that are the more important decisions than the ones that you decide to take. And what I mean by that is really think about the things that are important to you when you're looking to make a change to a new role. And I always say to people, quite literally write down, what are the 10 things that you want to get from your next role? And some of those will be, you know, some of those will be the literal kind of package, like I need X, base salary in order to be able to afford the rent or the mortgage or whatever it might be. Some of it will be lifestyle things like, I want, it's really important to me to be able to get to a gym within a 10-minute walking distance to the office at lunchtime. Everyone's list is going to be different. Write that list down. Draw your line, your hard line of, well, these top 3 or these top 5 are my absolute must-haves. And then even when you've been through a number of rounds of interviews and things like that for a role, keep going back to that list, refer back to it. And if you're not ticking all of your must-haves, take a really big step back and think about whether it's the right role or not, because there's nothing worse than being 3 months in or a week in even to a new role and going, oh, this isn't, I went for the shiny salary, but actually I haven't ticked these other boxes. And so I feel like some of the best decisions I've made in my career have been the roles where I've said, actually, no, this isn't quite right. And I remember the first time, for example, that someone offered me a salary that was over £100,000. And I was like, wow, I can't, like, this is such a milestone. I big smile. I'm like so excited. I can't believe this has happened. Like, I didn't know if I'd ever get to this point. I was so excited. And then I looked at my list and I was like, actually, I'm going to need to spend, 90% of my time on flights to development teams on the other side of the world. And, the head office is a 2-hour commute and I've got young kids. And I went down the rest of it and it just didn't tick any of my other boxes. And I ultimately said no to that. And I think that was one of the best decisions I made, but it would have been so easy, so easy to go, oh, wow, this is shiny thing. I'm going to go for that. So that's my advice. Write down the list of things that are really important, draw the line for the must-haves, and then, be honest with yourself and really stick to what's important. And if the role's not right, say no, turn it down.
100%. I have to agree with you. But yeah, Rico, thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Not at all. If I write a little blog on Medium with a couple of kind of tips and tricks and stuff on there, so you can always search for me on there if you want any more.
I'm sure you're going to get people reaching out to you after listening to this, because the advice you shared was amazing. So yeah, thank you so much. And until next time, bye for now.